All right, folks, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop here this Tuesday, end of the month, end of the pay period, April 30th. Great to see all of our students and members alike. Great to see Joyce, Ira, Charlene, Amy. Great to see Barbara, Philip, Patrick, Kevin, John, Dave, Daniel. Got Robert, got Olga, one of our new trial members joining us here. And let me get the webcam popping up for all of us there. All of us back on social media as well at Cyber Trading U. But full house here today inside our live trading room. We got Roger, Leda, Doug, Joe, Laureen, Thomas, Alex. I can keep going down the whole list, folks. Great to see all of our students and especially new members just joining us inside our live trading room each and every day, each and every week. Really quick, if you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works. Popping up on the lower left at Cyber Trading U. If you're new to any of our social media streams, just hit the follow, hit the subscribe button, hit the little notification bell or icon there as well. So you know when we have these workshops, you know when we go live each and every week. But otherwise, if you're interested at the end of this workshop, just scan that QR code on the top left there that you see just to join our live trading room, week-long trial, get you access to all of our students and members there. But I'll tell you what, this one stock here, Marin, M-R-I-N, I hope this thing pops and runs as we're going through this Traders Talk workshop. We have a lot to talk about, though, a lot of different questions that got sent in through email. But on top of that, though, obviously know where I got to begin. MULN, and not even from today, not even this move here today. Actually, my platform TradeStation, my broker, restricted us from trading it today. It doesn't happen as often. But thankfully, we ended up grabbing almost all the meat off the bone on yesterday's move, right? Yesterday's move was legendary. It was incredible. And it wasn't even a stock that popped like 500%, 1,000%. We've seen that happen, folks. That happens here in this room. But that's where I tell you on this stock, you didn't need the 500. You didn't need the 1,000. You barely needed the 100. This thing made a pretty solid push all throughout the day. Heading into the afternoon, it gave you that 315, 330 pot that we look for, program trading. So the question begs, why did we call it out? How did we jump in? Where did we jump in from? The whole story behind this move. And not just, myself. I'm talking traders in our room. I see Chuck, I see Alex here. Both ended up killing it on this stock. I saw Barbara, I thought, made some good money on this. A few of us ended up doing really well on this trade yesterday. So I got off a coaching call just a moment ago with one of our traders. I told him basically, give him the full version in Traders Talk. I gave him the start of it, though, here. So yesterday, when you look at this move, this stock, MULN, I'm going to get MRIN and MULN mixed up probably, but MULN here, automotive company, ended up making a big pop, basically from what, like 350-ish, 360-ish, I guess, like after the market opened up, all the way up as high as near $6, right? Or maybe even above. Well, this wasn't our first trade on this stock. Like yesterday was not our first time trading MULN. We ended up following this just even like a week ago, just basically a week ago on Wednesday last week. It ended up making a big pop from basically 281 up towards 409, the high. Really quick, all of us here in chat right now, let me ask you this. We go over this more in the Phase 2 stock course. We cover it here in Traders Talk here and there, but more in the Phase 2 curriculum and coaching program. We cover this often. But where you see this data box popping up, you should see this data box popping up on the daily chart. It says like 04, 24, 24. Well, that was back from Wednesday last week. Open, high, low, close, right? It says the word close in white font. And then to the right of that, you got some number there in green. What's the number to the right of that word close for Wendy and Locksme and Grant, Leonard, Carlos? What does it say there in that data box? Hopefully it pops up for you. It should. What does it say there, folks, if you happen to see it? Might be tough to read. Might need to squint a little bit. I get it. It might be tough to read there, but Wendy's saying 377, right? So absolutely, 377, and that's what we would call the closing bell print, at least on that one day. Well, what was the high the following day? Where did this hold resistance the next day? Well, it didn't touch 377 perfect, Wendy, but just generally it held under it and it tanked. So otherwise, I knew that 377, that area, was pretty relevant going into the day when this had popped yesterday morning. Broke out right away here. It ended up making a big squeeze up. Now, hey, if I'm not mistaken, really quick, I want to make sure I can actually get this on archive. I actually have all the chat logs. Like, I don't go through them really as much, but actually this trading room allows me to go back on all of the previous chats. I see everyone's posts and all that. Give me a quick sec. All right. So I think I made this known to you as far as support. I wrote this as early yesterday morning at 9:15 in the morning. Don't believe me? I got the timestamps, folks. Here, check this out. 9:15 in the morning, right? And the reason I focus on the time, let alone the level, is that the playbook was given to us in pre-market. Yesterday morning at 9:15 in the morning, you're saying MULN, big level from last week at 375. I meant 377. I had the line in my chart. It was off of this exact closing bell print. So from there, that was at 9:15 in the morning. Playbook was given out essentially at that time. Well, this ended up pulling back after the market opened up. And you could see over time it made the better push. It wasn't perfect. It actually was perfect right away. This thing pulled back under and over on like 2 candles. It started. It tried. But hey, I go through the greatest hits here each and every week inside our live trading room, especially in Traders Talk. I got to go through my catchphrases here briefly. For all of us here, all of our students, let me ask, and actually just for Carlos here, just going to write to him, log back out, log back in. You should be good to go. Probably a little glitch on your screen there probably. But for Grant, for Wendy, for all of our students here, when a stock breaks through a big level, this being a big level, what are we getting shortly after? We know it. We go through the same motions each and every week here and in class. We're getting a big move, right, Irving? There we go. He was first, the punch, Barbara, Patrick, all after, and everyone else saying, yeah. So even here, you get in from 377, 375 price. Okay, it starts off well and bounces. Let me just ask you, just even the line's not on the chart. I was going to put it there, but if you were to assume what would be a strong level above the price level 377, what could be an assumed price level that would normally have an iceberg off of it? Wendy says 4. John, Kevin, Grant, all saying 4. If not going to flip that into support, sayonara. This thing's going to pull back. So we got to keep going, right? We got to keep building. So that already started off pretty nice after the market opened, but it was more so afterwards where this ended up beginning to make a stronger push. And it ended up beginning. So from here, I'll tell you where I ended up jumping in. I took the first entry on this at 372. I took half my trade out at 382 as it began to push up, and I kept the second half going forward. So from that point, it ended up leading to obviously a hell of a pop. But this is where I'm looking for resistance to become support. So once this cleared 4, I am expecting this to hold support at $4. And I was holding on basically to say if it's not going to hold support at 4, I'll probably just end up making mere pennies on the trade or just break even at that stage. I don't like holding on to trades that long in terms of time, unless it's obviously moving in my direction. But there was a little risk involved with holding on as it's dropping off here and making, not to say true lower lows, but the volume really dissipated. So there's risk involved as it's dropping down here. As it reemerges back over 4, and certainly I think the VWAP at that time, I'll get you the full heat map here, actually, book map that is, show a little level 4. Basically, the price level $4 in coordinates with the VWAP price right there. Once it broke back above that, I knew that I was in a better state, better position really from that point, and obviously ran up. But, I was focused on the whole number level afterwards, $4, and that was in combination, which right here at the VWAP price, both of them together will create, a combination of an area, a level, resistance, flipping into support. Now, obviously, easy to say it moved up much higher after. I left a lot of money on the table going into the afternoon. I got a lot of crap on this chart here, so my apologies. I'll go over what all this means in just a bit. But basically to say, by the time the market closed, I was out of this trade. I got out in full, I think, by through 5. No. It was before that. It was like shortly after 550. There we go, 543 on a pullback. I got out on my remaining position there. So I left some money on the table. It ran in the after hours. We don't focus on that. That's not really the focal point here at CTU. I can only imagine at the end of every day that for Wendy, Grant, Kevin, John, Philip, all of our students here, that your eyes are probably pretty tired at the end of every day, staring at this unhealthy blue light coming off of your bright computer screens. I feel the same way, folks. So day, I'm done. I'm not trying to trade this crap in the after hours. Most of the time, they end up failing and they pull back. So they really don't provide as much continuation going into the post market. If there is continuation, it's not healthy continuation in terms of liquidity. Yeah, it might pop on the chart, but if there's not really a strategic move built off of volume, then I'm not going to risk any money, right? And that's even to be said during the normal hours. Well, point being, where did the stock top off at? What was I looking for essentially? Well, I did get out on my remaining position at 543, and it was because, well, enough was enough. I was in from 372. I was up a decent chunk, not trying to get too greedy. So I don't want to have this pull back down again and then just me waste, profits out of nowhere. We had an iceberg order here at 550, about 40,000 shares. Looked like your largest order out there since 450. So, I'm thinking heading into the afternoon, if it's going to just pop and drop there, I was like, probably just look to jump out. So, I ended up getting out, I think, just around this area. But otherwise, though, this is where I'll show you the daily chart. I'll lower this line now. Basically, right here, I was looking for a historical level right around 630-ish, 620-ish, basically. I think I'd mentioned 620 is my price, and I'll show you that here as well. In chat right now, if you're in our live trading room, just had a little pop-up coming up there on the top right for you. Just get the timestamp again. I just say this out loud because I show you my game plan each and every day in this chat board at 1:04 in the afternoon. Not everyone's watching it at that time. I get it. You don't need to be there at 1:04, but I am typing out levels to you where I say, hey, keep in mind, scroll up on the chat if you need to. Go back and see what I'm posting, see what Rich is posting. Obviously, Fausto on top, but just, MULN historical level around that 620. So give or take a little bit, that's ultimately what I was looking for on this move. I think I moved that line up to 637. I think I made a better line. That's basically the same price I was referencing, that area. So this dashed purple line represents exactly that, so to say, historical level. Looks like it held it pretty damn nicely at 430 heading into the after hours, then broke above it, right? Then it even broke above it. So, you know what? I'm restricted from trading the stock right now. When I woke up this morning and I opened up my platform right away, I knew, and then Wayne said it on top as well. A few of our students that have TradeStation at least are not able to trade the stock today. It happens. Not often does it happen, but it does happen. So that's where I just tell you, and this is more my experience than anything, you can't cry over spilt milk. If this stock goes to like $15, then obviously that's an issue. But if this stock is just moving today and it's not setting itself up for a nice breakout, then why are we getting upset about something that we can't even trade? So, there's other stocks out there that we could follow, and we did. AGBA was our main move today. What's this stock up to right now? MULN. For any of my traders that are able to trade this stock, kind of interesting. This broke above this line here, 637, and this line we'll call it here too, a combination of them as resistance, right? I'll probably just start clearing a couple lines here, maybe just make it easy on the eyes for us perhaps. But, basically this area got broken above as resistance right here, right? So for Wendy and for Irving and for Phil, let me just ask, and I'll answer Wendy's question coming up. What do we expect resistance to get flipped into at first? When a stock breaks resistance, it runs off resistance. Resistance initially, the first time, should become what? It'd be pretty interesting to see what happens here. I'm definitely interested in seeing if this can become support, right? And have it break under these lines, then back over these lines, and preferably both. If it comes down to the purple and then bounces, that's basically the same thing, but that's where it's more subjective as far as when to pull the trigger, because this is trending down pretty steady. This already made a big move back from last week. Basically went from 250-ish up to 750, right? Or close to. So it already doubled or whatever. Eventually this thing will make a lower low. So you do want to focus on resistance initially becoming support. That's where I feel confident about this level. But if this goes under and then just stays under, there was a call out that one of our traders made earlier today. I think even a trial member made, and it was a great call out. It was an awesome call out, but the stock just broke right through support, kept dropping. If this just breaks right through support and doesn't break back over it, then there's no entry for me here. Zero. There's actually a very similar setup happening live on a different stock right now. We'll jump to that in a bit. Really quick from Wendy, and I had a chat that came in from Danny P. I'll get to that in just a moment here. That's on the MULN as well. So actually, I'll jump to that after. But I do want to get to AGBA. AGBA is actually making a move that I was alluding to earlier. I was on a coaching call with one of our students, Ray, and we were following it. And it's starting to make a little bounce. Wendy's asking, why do they restrict it? Why would a broker like TradeStation restrict trading on a stock? Well, really quick, I'm going to answer that in full. Just give me a sec. Do you remember KODK for Wendy and for Grant, for Wayne? Perhaps you might be here. Any of our students back, maybe we'll say like 3-4 years ago, perhaps. And Kodiak, KODK. I remember this was like one of the first stocks that I learned that about, where your broker can restrict trading. Yeah. That's the pot that we're talking about then, back in 2020. So TradeStation restricted trading because they thought it was too volatile. They said for whatever reason they deemed that this was too volatile. It's too much of a liability for traders to long it, to short it, to just try and enter it as a trade. I'm sure that in terms of restricting trading, they're probably just restricting it to selling and withdrawals. So if you're like long on the position already, if you're like, investing in a swing or whatever it pops, I'm sure that you can get out, but I don't think that you could enter the trade once they restrict it. That's just all I could really say on it. You'd have to call them specifically to pick their brain and ask like why exactly, to what degree, because truth be told, MULN is not on a 15-20 cent spread. It's not. Newsflash. This thing is on like a, maybe 2-3 cent spread. It's not the most volatile stock that I've ever seen or we've ever seen as a group. So there's got to be an obvious reason, a particular reason that I'm not aware of. But that's generally the sentiment behind it. Generally, the broker deems it as too volatile for you to just try and risk entering it. That's all. All right, got to move on to AGBA that we got to cover here in just a bit. But to finish up on this, just a question that came in from Danny. How did you know on MULN? Okay, so I kind of answered this already. There we go. So keep in mind, I don't read these questions beforehand in full. So get a live reaction. Danny was asking actually just before, kind of answered it. How do you know on MULN that 620 was or is a very important key level, 620, and then it moved up to 775, and then today, basically from 620 up towards 740? Well, the answer in general is we don't know that it's going to next day. If we did, none of us would be here in a trading room. We'd be out there in our mansions or private islands or whatever the case may be, right? We don't know. We got to focus on what happens more often than not. So with MULN, if you look at the weekly chart here, this stock was not really $400,000 per share back in 2021, 2020. This stock has been reverse split to eternity, basically. Over and over and over, they've come out with news with a reverse stock split likely to remain above NASDAQ or NYSE listing requirements. I think they're NASDAQ, so NASDAQ requirements. Basically, the more that they do that, eventually off of any good news, actual like formative good news that comes out on the stock, people that are short on this trade need to cover. People that are short on the stock will have to cover their positions, get out, and that's what leads to a massive short squeeze. So if you recall, there was a trade WISA, W-I-S-A, last week, Wistia, WISA. This stock was not really $300,000 per share back in 2020, but it got reverse split over and over and over and over and over. So, a couple weeks ago it was at this point, made a big pop, gapped up the following morning in pre-market, but then it dumped off. So where I say this with MULN, it has similar characteristics on the daily chart or weekly chart. And I thought that once this started to move yesterday, once it did, meaning I wasn't assuming it was going to, so once I started to see a small move up, that's where I started to immediately think like, okay, wow, there might be a lot more left from where this came from the week prior, from last week. So again, keep in mind, we traded the stock last week. It dumped back down. We kind of forgot about it for a second, focused on a new flavor of the day. And then once this started to make a move back up again, it immediately sank to me like, okay, this could be Wistia. This could be that WISA trade from last week as well. And this might have more legs behind it going forward. And we'll see what happens here. It's actually doing a good job right now trying to hold this, pin this as support. But a lot of my level identification comes truly from experience. It comes from studying level 3 and level 4, which is, the heat map program here. And, simply you could look on the daily, the weekly chart. Most of us come from a swing trading investing background, and, most of us have at least 5 to 10 years of market experience, that is, coming into CTU just as a student. So probably the most basic primitive thing that you learned, even with investing, let alone day trading, is just how to read a chart. Stock goes up and down, chart goes from left to right. That's how I phrase it. It's not like the stock does a Michelle Kwan triple axle on the chart for you. Stock goes up and down and chart goes from left to right. That's how you're reading it. So here it's a matter of saying, yeah, resistance should initially become support on this stock because of just that basic principle. But the more this fails to make that reactionary move, that larger reactionary move that we were looking for, well, it's going to make a larger reactionary move. I guarantee it. I bet my trading account on it. It's going to make a reactionary move, just not the type that you want. So if this doesn't bounce soon, I'd say it's not looking too hot. Same to be said here. AGBA. I got off a call, one of our students just before, a very similar setup actually. AGBA. This had a solid run to it earlier this morning. Beautiful pop. Let me ask all of our students here, if you can, here, a little pop quiz. I teach this in phase 1, teach this in phase 2 more, and certainly Fausto will be spearheading this basically in phase 3, our advanced class coming up tomorrow even. For myself, I have this one column up. Look at the delta column. If you see on the far right, delta, right? Just answer this quick question for me. What price on that column delta has the largest green spike? What price on the column delta has the largest green spike at it? So 345, right? Now that's in lieu of just consolidation and just testing this top here. It's also 350. 350, definitely a pretty big iceberg number there. About 30,000 shares got filled. 30,000 shares got filled there. Let's do a little numbers game here. A little numbers game. What, about 30,000 shares were on the ask here? 35, 36,000. There were about 213,000 shares of just buying alone, just buying at 340. So you tell me, what's the bigger level, 350, 340? I'm sorry, not 340, 345 that was. Tell me what the bigger level is, 345 or 350. It's 345. So it's saying that, I'm more focused on that as my potential support level. Now, earlier, it broke under it, right? So it's like, shoot, it's got to go under and over. If it breaks under and that's it, there's just zero entry. That's where I told Carlos earlier on a different trade. And all of us, I tell all of us this, you can't catch the falling knife. You can't just leave a buy order out there, kick your feet up like, oh, okay, it's gonna hold, no problem. That's easy. That's how accounts get blown up. So, trust me, I hear that from fellow members on coaching calls here throughout the months. Not every day do I hear that stuff, but on occasion, a trader here will get caught, and it's oftentimes because either they're just not setting their stops entirely, which is bad enough to begin with. That's honestly probably the worst thing of them all. But otherwise, catching the falling knife is right around there. Just leaving an order out there on the bid, oh yeah, support's gonna hold. It's gonna come on. So that's where I say support should become resistance at first, and the more needles above that resistance, then you should expect that move, and possibly for this to get flipped into support coming up. So we'll see if there's still even more room left on this trade, because we're not out of the weeds just yet. We're not out of the doghouse just yet. It broke back above my level there. I was shouting that out with Ray earlier on our call. I was hoping for this to come down to this area, 345-ish, 350. And, now at this point, it's got to really hold above it. If it doesn't, then game over. So every trade begins with the entry. That's where I'm kind of getting to there for Danny, who had chatted me before. And then just, I'm going to go through emails and all of our students, and especially new trial members here. Keep in mind, before you focus on the target, the profit, okay, I have a chance to make 13 cents. Let's just use right here on a trade, random number, 13 or 12 cents, right? You got to make sure you're focused on your entry first. That's a nice profit that you could take. That's not greedy, actually, looking for only 12 or 13 cents, random number. But you got to make sure that your entry is as close to a volume-based level or a big chart level as possible, because the further away that we are from it, we're exposing ourselves. If we take a trade 15, 20 cents out from where we should have, well, what happens when the stock drops 15, 20 cents back down to your level? Are you normally taking 15, 20 cent losses? Because I'd say that we probably need to make sure that we tighten that up. And one of the best ways that we tighten up a loss, outside of legitimately literally just putting your seatbelt on and setting your stop, is making sure that you have a tight entry point to your level, right? That's where I say every trade begins with your entry, and every entry begins with a big level. So, for MULN, started off for me at the 377 area from Wednesday's closing price back last week. Thankfully, I was there and I caught it. If I didn't catch it from there, I would have had to catch it from the next level above. But even here now, look what's happening. This Traders Talk is sponsored by Celsius Energy Drink. No, I'm kidding. But with that said, at least, it's trying to nip it. And the more times it tests this as support, it's going to be a total break. So this is kind of do or die right now to me. This really needs to get going, this MULN. Pretty similar with AGBA, right? Because when the volume just gets sucked out of this trade, meaning when there's less and less volume being traded on this stock per minute, it's not like the foot's being placed more on the gas pedal. So let's start to see this really pop soon, and maybe we'll start to see more volume kick in. But if not, then this thing is going to pull back, right? That's why I always say, just separately in class and Traders Talk and coaching sessions one-on-one more intimately, every trade begins with the entry. And I'm sorry, not just that, but just like really with saying that though, that you got to make sure that once this begins to break above the level, it stays above the level, because you don't want to just be stuck watching the grass grow. There's other trades that we can capitalize on. And the more that we're stuck just watching this, it doesn't get us too far. All right. All right, so really quickly, just keep going through some messages and emails here. Actually, just give me a brief moment. Looks like one of our trial members here, Laxmi, is here. I'll tell you what, didn't get too many emails coming in today. Well, I mean, taking as many trades this week, folks. Any stocks you want me to go over? Let me know if there's any trades that you want me to go over from earlier today. Definitely. Otherwise, we'll probably cut this a little short, probably by 11:45. Right now, we're heading into a slower time of the market. Also, with that, we're heading into the Fed meeting. We're in earnings season. But we have, the Fed meeting concluding tomorrow. So that's typically where you're going to see more action and probably see a lot more, moves happen. And once Powell starts talking again, Tesla was a nice little drop off from earlier today. That ended up pulling back actually under a big level that I was looking at from the pop it had from the day prior. Yeah, so this Tesla trade I could at least touch upon pretty briefly. This one ended up making a hell of a pop early in pre-market yesterday morning. News came out over the weekend, and with that, Tesla made a nice squeeze to start the pre-market off with. But even afterwards, there was a pretty good level to work off of. It was right here. I'll show you on the heat map. Much like with the closing price, oftentimes at the market open, you'll tend to see a larger dot ball, whatever you want to call it nowadays. It is a volume dot, folks. Volume dots. See right there. That's where otherwise dot ball, whatever. You see this big opening bell print. It's what I call it here, especially at the market open for Tesla at 188.35. Well, it's just to mention that there was about 1.3 million shares that were filled at that price upon the market opening up. So break out your old calculator here. Probably won't even give me a real number. Probably overload on my calculator here. So 1.3 million times $188.35. That's about $245 million worth of stock being traded right at the market open. Now, the question is, who knows what are people doing at that point? We don't have that answer right at 9:30. We don't have that answer at 9:32, 9:35 in the morning. We don't. But what we say is, okay, well, that's going to be a clear level afterwards. And, if the stock ends up breaking under it, well, that should be a resistance. And it was. Well, what happens if a stock keeps testing a resistance? It could break above it, and then hopefully we see a big move shortly after. This thing ran, right? Well, when a stock breaks above resistance and it runs off of it, initially, the first time, I'd like to think that resistance should become support. So what was it, 188.35, kind of right around there, basically. It was already under it going into the market open, mind you. You know, it was kind of pulling back here in the early morning. Look at that. Pretty head on, right? Pretty good. Pretty damn good, actually, here early in the morning, acting as support. But over time, it broke under it. The goal is to see it break back over it and remain above it. Break above it and remain above it. So easy to say in hindsight, but really shortly after the market opens up and after 9:35, this breaks through this big level on the way up. This presents a good opportunity, a good buying opportunity at that. You know, SPYs kind of pop into start here at this point in the morning and flattens out after. But at least if you're looking for continuation on Tesla, this is a good entry right here as soon as it breaks through this level on the way up. And it held above it as support shortly afterwards and moved up. But obviously it didn't continue. It ended up pulling back. And otherwise, if it's not going to make that better move up, it's going to make a move just opposite direction. So that's kind of just what I wanted to focus on there pretty much. You know, it was a nice little entry at first on Tesla, but otherwise pulled back. So you got the AGBA and then the MULN. All right, we're trying. We're trying right now. We're still kind of giving this a good old fight. You know, I think that you need to see like more of an iceberg pop up on the buy side here for this to really maintain as a stronger run going forward. It's still underneath the VWAP price, underneath this year's 668. So that should be your next resistance even. Nowhere near out of the weeds just yet on this stock. So if you took that entry, off to a good start. You know, this is the type of trade where, you know, if you move your stop up to break even and then it suddenly flushes you out, you can't really complain much at all on it because this time of the day doesn't present too much to us. We're pre-Fed meetings, so there's really a flat market or even down market as we're talking right now. But otherwise, it's just to say that, you know, if this runs, then perfect. But let it play in accordance to the levels that we're focused on. There are times where I get from traders, not myself, but more traders that I coach, like, oh, well, if I held on to this longer here, I would have been able to flip a profit. It's like, yeah, but if the stock drops 50 cents for about 2 hours before it moves back up and then you squeak out 10 cents gain, is it worth your time? Is that how you want to treat yourself? Is that how you want to gamble as a trader? You know, we don't gamble here, right? We're trying to make at least more educated decisions with the money that we're risking. So of course there's risk involved. You know, it's quintessentially gambling. But you know, otherwise here, if this fails to run up higher, then it's going to eventually just dump right back below support. So you know what? If it ends up only giving us 5 or 8 cents and then you don't get out in time and it stops you at break even, again, we talked about this all last month. I'm probably going to drop the golf example going forward, but it's like going par for the course, right? It's like going par for the course. I think pars are pretty good when you're shooting golf, right? When you're shooting a round of 18, when you're playing golf. Get my lingo right. You know, I was going to say this as well for Traders Talk. I was going to mention here. Oh, and also I want to dip into a little crypto. We're going to do a little crypto before we finish, so a little bit more time here. But this is where I was mentioning this on the microphone yesterday. It rolled off the tongue pretty well, so I figured I'd save it for Traders Talk here too. Okay. What's everybody's favorite dinner? What's everybody's favorite dinner when they go out to eat? If you were to have your last meal ever, right? Let's say if you have your last meal ever, what's your last meal? What's your favorite meal, the one that you savor the most? What's your go-to? What would be your number one meal if you were to pick right now? Your last meal ever, what would you go with? Lauren says a T-bone steak. Charlene says everything's seafood. I'm getting hungry already. I just had a nice breakfast. I was telling Grant, a little ground up bison burger. Ooh, we're eating healthy today. A lot of us saying steak though, right? Steak, lobster, lobster ravioli, says Brian. I think Fausto would like that. He's a lobster fra diavolo guy, if I'm not mistaken. Grant says a big fat deer. There you go. I'm not going to try and pronounce what John just wrote in the chat board and embarrass myself in front of Andrea here, of all people. Dave says Nacho Supreme. I got to get my Italian right? No, but we're saying that. Pretend you're trading a stock right here, and it's like, you know, you're going out to eat dinner and you're eating your favorite meal. And you know what? You have a lot of it. Like it's a big meal in front of you. And you finish probably about like 4/5 of it, maybe 3/5 of it. But you're feeling damn full at the end of the meal. It's your favorite meal. You're so satisfied at the end of it, or really, once you get full, you feel very satisfied. But when you look down at your plate, you still see 2/5 left, or maybe 1/5 of it left. Could I ask you folks, would you be upset about leaving food on the table there? Would you be more upset about leaving the food on the table than you were about the meal that you ate? Answer. Let me know. And, if your answer is yes, then I'd love for you to elaborate, please, because, I've never felt that way before. And I've never really seen anyone act that way before at a restaurant. It's not like someone's like crying, like, oh, I left 1/5 of my meal left. Oh, no. You're paying the same amount. It's not like you're paying more because you left money, you left food on the plate, right? So, could I ask you, if a stock moves up a little bit more without you, why are we getting upset? What are we doing, guys and gals? What are we doing with our time here? You know what I mean? Why are we thinking negatively? Why are we putting ourselves in that state of mind? What are we doing? Now, if the stock moves up like 100% after, and the roof is being ripped off the place, of course, we beat ourselves up. MULN yesterday, if I were to go back to this, just hey, it moved up a lot more in the after hours, right? Was a new student, new member of CTU. I'm gonna just actually copy pasta and delete all of this here, just coming up. But basically, if this is your first time seeing a runner like this move, trust me, it will not be the last. I guarantee you that part of it. I absolutely guarantee you. Stick with us here inside our live trading room. This will not be the last runner that you ever see. So there's going to be other opportunities out there. And then otherwise, even to say, like, you use this as a learning opportunity and say, why did this make the exact move in which it made? And here every Tuesday morning, we have the chance to cover that, right, for a couple of trades. But that's where you got to put in a little extracurricular yourself and, on your own trades, review your own journals, and even stocks that you didn't follow, stocks that you didn't look at, and do the same thing. The more that you realize afterwards, the less money you're going to leave on the table. You're still not going to be perfect with it, though. We're human beings. We're not programs and algorithms in our heads, right? I don't think anyone ever wants to be that anyway. So we're going to be imperfect. That's why I stress so much on the entry, because that's where we're starting our trade off with. So before you focus on, the target, focus on like, oh, I can make 13 cents. I can make 50 cents on this trade. Let's just focus on getting in at a clean price, at a clean time. You heard me say that in journaling class about like, I had students back in the day, not nearly as much now. Trust me, I've hammered this point home. I know my students now, especially longtime students, they've learned this, because I haven't seen it. But a little while ago, I'd have from like a couple traders, like, you risk like 1,000 or 2,000 shares on this type of stock. And they would give me their journal, right? Their trading journal, like the Excel journal, the reason for entry. It'd be like, Josh called it out. Or like a reason for entry, and it would be like just stock was moving up. Guys, I'd rather you buy a $5 scratch off if we're going to gamble. And I don't mean to sound blunt, but there has to be better logistics and better reasoning for you to be risking $5,000, $6,000, $10,000, $12,000 into a position, right? So, that's where I want you to be more mindful with your money, and it all begins with getting in. All begins with the entry point. So, let me know if you have any follow-up questions, at least, folks, in regards to at least the analogies we talked about, any of the trades that we were focused on from earlier today, AGBA, you got the MULN here. I just got stopped out on MRIN, break even on the second half of what I had here going into Traders Talk. I said break even, so I just got out right at 307. Happy with that. On par. All right, so let me actually just check Bitcoin chart really quickly. I know a couple of us were actually itching for me to focus on this last week. I didn't. So I've been covering Bitcoin really for the last several months now, right? Really since January, actually, because we talked about the drop down to 39.5. It bounced right from there as a perfect call out. From there, though, this is where I've been generally saying, if you've been following us like in our room routinely, if you're a Bitcoin head like I am, and if you're with us every day, this is the Bitcoin daily chart. So it just shows what's happened day to day and really since the beginning of this year. Here's our drop down to, under and over 39.5, under and over 39.5 right there, basically. Perfect move. But from that point, though, obviously it broke all-time highs even, kept going. there's this Bitcoin halving event, right? It just happened, already happened. So every 4 years, basically, the amount of Bitcoin that's available to mine drastically reduces in supply by 50%. There's a whole bunch of crap way above my level and pay grade. I get chatted from one of our students, Alex, every morning on it. Always gives me the juicy details. If he wants to share some good stuff with you, he can. But either way, it's for me to tell you. Every time that there's been this event, the Bitcoin halving event, obviously Bitcoin's taken off exponentially, really since the very first cycle back in 2009. I can go all the way back there if you want me to. But every parabolic move that you see here on Bitcoin is shortly built in after this event happens. And it happened last cycle back in 2020. Here we are 4 years later, practically now. What I've been saying is, don't expect such a clean pop-up right away. Give it like a month or even a couple of months of consolidation. Why? Well, there's probably traders out there that want to shake out other traders, liquidate some people, take out stops, and then have it run back up, much like you often see with stocks, right? You see that happen with stocks all the time. It happens with crypto. There's futures with crypto. There's leveraged trading with crypto. So there's a lot of people out there pumping up their own money, but there's also people out there that are trying to take out other people's money and then run it up after. So that's the first thing. I just thought naturally, like, you'd probably see some market maker shakes and crap to begin with, much like we see with stocks. The Bitcoin halving event, I think, was like basically 420. It was like 419, 420 here. So, really at that point, where could you find support? Well, I'm looking right here, right off this low that we had, which is basically 59.3, a little bit above that, virtually 60,000. Well, since that time and prior to the halving, basically right before the halving event happened, it was already needling support. So simply put, the more that this could needle support, it's eventually going to make a clean break under it and probably drop a little bit lower, closer towards like 50-ish there. So one of our members in chat was saying, like, if it breaks below 58, they might see a good opportunity in it. And I agree, but that's just where you say if support gets broken through, you're probably expecting a cleaner move down first, not just a 58 or a little under that, probably much lower. I'd even say eyeballing it right now. You see this right here? I could probably let's see, that might be better. Yeah, that's pretty good. So delete this line. See this peak? See this peak right here, a bit of a lower high? This is essentially your neckline for a Head and Shoulders that built him back in 2021. So if it breaks above this and it runs off of it, which it did, resistance could then become the next support. So that's something that I would simply watch for there, John, and all of our crypto heads out there like I am. I'm actually coming in tomorrow probably. What? I hope that Bitcoin either craps out in the next 10 hours or maybe even 12 hours from now, or it just holds right here. Why? Because I have auto buys on the 1st and 15th of every month. So coming in tomorrow, coming in hot, I'm going to be likely getting some Bitcoin and some other crypto out there. But, either way, I'm in it long term. This is no day trade. So, I said that back in 2022 when this was dying. I was like, it sucks. Obviously, it's down big. It's dropping like a rock. But personally, I'm long term. I'm thinking for the next 5 to 10 years from that point. All right, so folks, check back in a couple more times on our stocks for right now, on our equities, right? So, hey, if Bitcoin drops, you figure like Coinbase is going to keep dropping a little bit too. You got big support likely on the bid at $200. Coming in right here, really briefly. Probably big support because you figure as a century level number, just it's not showing us cleanly on the chart. So maybe even it breaks a little under it over time. But with Bitcoin dropping, you're getting a pullback on coin. You're getting your short on much better short now on CLSK right now compared to earlier. A little rugged earlier, but definitely a clean break just earlier. That's a nice little drop. But otherwise, outside of those, we'll focus on the AGBA. There we go. That broke below support. So unfortunately, that did not continue. If it's not going to break higher, there's only one other way it will go. So there goes that one for the time being. And then the MULN, same deal. This isn't looking too great. I mean, if there's a new order that pops up on the bid, that'd be a nice blessing in disguise. But otherwise, at least Yeah, that AGBA, like we just said before, if it's not going to break higher, if it's not going to hold support, make that move up. There is one other way it's going to go. It's not just going to die off and like flatten out for the next few hours. It's going to either run off that 347, 350 going up, or it's going to tank. So it's looking like it's going to tank here. Folks, we're going to finish up Traders Talk for the time being. A little early, but otherwise, hey, let me know if you have any other questions that keep coming in. Just shoot me over a quick email. That goes across the board, all of us inside our live trading room. You could always private chat me. A few of us did just earlier today as well, and keep those chats coming in. But you could also email me on top if you're not as fancy with the trading room. You could always email me just on the side after hours, josh@ctutrading.com. Popping up on the stream as well. Hope you enjoyed. If you're on Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works. At CyberTradingU is our social handle. That was there the whole time. My email address again, josh@ctutrading.com. If you have any other questions before joining us inside our live trading room, continuing along the conversation with all of our students and instructors, the man himself, Fausto, as well there. Just shoot me a quick email. Let me know, and we'll be able to talk on the side. But otherwise, scan that QR code, flash your phone, flash your camera. Just on the top left of that stream right there, get you live access to a week-long trial. We look forward to having you there. Now, really quick, at the horn. We did cover this just all throughout the last 50 minutes, I believe. We did. I definitely covered this on entries I showed you I took. What are the guidelines for your entry since you have emphasized that point? Well, again, we did emphasize that point. We covered trades that I took just earlier, just on the MULN. I showed you entries live. And not only that, I thought I gave thorough explanation. But that is where I could simply tell you, really, although I did explain it, keep the questions coming in, and hopefully on other stocks I could talk to you about that more just on the side. But as a trial member, that's where I'd say talk to Fausto. He's going to likely have a conversation with you coming up over the next week, few days, where he'll give you much better insight as far as what you need to do in order to start off as a student of CTU. It takes more than just one workshop here to start cranking out trades, right? In order for you to be a master of all this, let alone any style of trading. Options, investing, anyone that says, it takes a 1 week or, one webinar, that's not what we said. But if anyone else says that, they're blowing smoke. So that's where I say it takes more than just one workshop here. Traders Talk to go through it all. We encourage you to join us in our classes. But if you're not ready for that just yet, continue with us inside our live trading room, because every Tuesday morning here at 11 o'clock, I do this workshop. And at a minimum, the more that you're going through this workshop, you're going to have a much more profound understanding for what I'm looking for in the moment, not just in hindsight, not just in this workshop, but like for Lawrence and Grant and Ray. Well, we got Raymond S. Ray D also, both of them, and all of our students alike. They are the examples right here that I'm working with, because they've been with us for days, weeks, months, but even years where, they are following along, and every day there's something new for them to learn. And, the goal is to be more reactionary in the moment, right? That's always the goal. So there are still points where a stock might pop or make a move, and I'm not quick enough to take it. That's okay. The best thing to do is go back on it, realize why it made the exact move. Hell, there might just be a point where it just wasn't there for the taking. It may have been too fast for you, or you may have just turned over to it a fraction of a second too late. Shit happens, all right? That stuff happens, right? You can't fight that. You can't get upset about that. But outside of just that, at least, that's where we say the more that we go back on these trades and study, the better that we'll have an ability to react in the heat of the moment. All right. But otherwise, I'll be back later on this afternoon for all of us here live, 2:30 Eastern, just for the afternoon meeting. And we will go from there, folks. I'll talk to everybody soon.